So now we understand these basic principles. Jesus believed we ought to own property, ought to own our own property. He believed in honest work, and he believed that those who've been blessed ought to be merciful. So that's the foundational thing. Y'all got that? Now let's go a little deeper in this situation. Jesus also recognized the ways in which money can be used legitimately. And please understand, if we can use it legitimately, we can use it illegitimately too. See, some folk use money as a means to make other folk do what they want them to do. That's not a legitimate means for money. Some folk use money to make themselves feel good or look good or be good. That's not a legitimate use of money. Some folk use money just to feel secure. That is not a legitimate use of money. Well, what is a legitimate use of money? Got 5 of them. 5 of them I want to show you. First of all, money can be legitimately used to meet the basic needs of the family. Scriptural reference, Mark 7th chapter, verses 10 through 13. Money can be used to take care of your house, y'all, and the folk who live in your house. Number 2, money may be used to support religious institutions and the conduct of worship. Well, how do we know that? Well, Jesus sanctioned the use of money to support the temple. You remember the story of the widow's mite, when she came in and put her last in the temple offering. And Jesus says she's going to be blessed. Now, some folks will look at that from a humanistic perspective. Well, how is she going to be blessed? She done gave all her money to the church. She ain't even got nothing, and she done gave all her money to the church. She should at least kept that and got her something to eat. God will understand. Please understand, folks, God got a plan. And we don't know what God told that woman when she came up there with her last 2 bits, her last 2 mites. God knew what was in her heart. We didn't know. See, we can't assume that God is telling folk to do something or another. You know, can we talk? We can't assume that because your hot water heater broke and you need to get a new hot water heater, and just so happen your tithe is the same amount that you're going to need to get your hot water heater. And then some folks get on the horns of the dilemma. Well, God understand I need hot water. First of all, let me be clear. That tithe ain't your money. That's God's money. That's just like if I gave you $100 and said, hold this. And your hot water heater broke, and you took my $100 and fixed your hot water heater, and I come looking for my $100 and you tell me, well, my hot water heater broke. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That was my money. You could at least ask me to borrow my money. God has a plan. God has this thing laid out, and we have to understand that a legitimate use for God's money is the support of God's house. See, the people in Haggai, the reason the Haggai brought the word from God was because God told the children of Israel to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem after they returned from the captivity. They came back, and instead of building God's house, they said, well, let me fix mine first. And they were living good. They were living nice. They were building all these big, beautiful houses, but God's house was in a shambles. And God had to send a prophet by to let them know, wait a minute, I don't understand. I told you to build my house. And why is it that you can build your house and not build my house, and then you wonder why stuff ain't working for you? You wonder why you eat and you're still hungry. You wonder why you drink and you're still thirsty. You wonder why you put them clothes on, you're still cold. And then you wonder why you get your money. You pick up your check, you cash your check, and it's like putting it in a pocketbook that got holes in it. God said, consider your ways. Money may be used to meet the basic needs of the family. Money may be used to support religious institutions and the conduct of worship. Number 3, money may be used to minister to the poor. Please understand. Please hear this. In Jesus' time, wasn't no Social Security. Wasn't no Catholic relief charities. Wasn't no Salvation Army or the Red Cross. When somebody was in need, they couldn't go get an SSI check. They couldn't call Jock to come defend them so they could get their government check. Matter of fact, the government wasn't giving no checks. The government was taking money from folk. And if you couldn't earn any money, that's just too bad. The only way poor folk was going to eat was that God's people had to provide. And please hear me, please hear me. In Israel, God had a law of the harvest where when the harvesters went into the field to pick the grain off of the plants, that they were commanded to leave a little bit on the grain. And those who were poor, if they were hungry, they could go in somebody's field, and they may not could get a bushel basket of corn, but they might be able to get enough ears to get through dinner. They may not get 4 or 5 bushels of wheat, but they could get enough to make some flour so they could eat. That was the law. That was the means by which God provided that there would be nobody hungry in his kingdom. See, one of the things that I'm troubled with is that, you know, we hard on poor folk.